Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Kaiju Talks. This is Jared.
This is Carter.
Today, we're going to be discussing great movie scenes in terrible films.
Let's get into it.
Spider-Man 3.
Objectively the best film in the entire series.
Never. Never. I would say it, though, terrible movie. For whatever reason, I still felt like I was having a fun time watching it, even though, in general, it was a awful.
Yeah, it kind of falls in that category of popcorn flick where it's like you can kind of enjoy it in theaters, but even when you're watching it, it's still sort of like, ugh.
They did Venom dirty in that one. However, there's this one scene, and actually a lot of people agree with this, that would be considered kind of almost like its saving grace, the birth of Sandman, where he wakes up the next day after being turned into dust, basically. And, for that, say what yes, you say that the CGI was pretty awful.
It was 2007.
However, you felt the emotional feeling in it, especially with the music and the actions, especially when Sandman's trying to take the locket of his daughter, who's unfortunately dying in the film.
Yeah, I think that's sort of what makes that scene good, is the fact that there is the emotional weight behind it, right? Like, all he wants to do is protect his daughter and keep his daughter healthy and safe and whatever, and now he's put in a situation where he can't, and it really translates well in that scene in terms of, he tries to grab the locket and it kind of goes through the sand of his hand. He can't grab it at first, and kind of that realization that he's never going to be able to be the same for his daughter again. And
I also felt like it was like that moment where you realize, okay, you know what, he's really not a bad guy. Sure, he's doing bad things, but
his whole thing is he's a bank robber or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the real problem here is America and having paid health care. If they're in Canada, his daughter would be fine. She'd have all the health care she needs.
Oh, now we just got political. Evil Dead, the 2013 version. Though, I will say, I did actually kind of enjoy this film. I do understand why a lot of people don't like it. It was kind of like they were trying to remake The Evil Dead, but you didn't even bring in Ash's character.
There's a certain charm to the 80s Evil Dead movies you just can't really recreate.
No, they did. They definitely tried going a little bit too hardcore, I thought. However, I will say the ending scene, the ending battle between Maya and the demon, I thought was honestly had some of the best practical, the whole movie had great practical effects, but this one for me had the best, especially with the truck falling on her arm.
Yeah, I don't think I noticed any CG. The only moment that might have been CG was when the demon's eye was kind of blinking after its head got cut in half, but even that could have been a practical effect.
It did make you love what you can do with practical effects, right?
Well, and just also how practical effects, there's just so much more visceral when you see when she's pulling her arm out and you see the tendons all ripping in the bone and stuff. If that was CG, I just don't think it would look quite as good. So it really sells it. It really makes it I was having visceral reactions watching that scene. It's just oh my god, ugh.
Yeah, and it was too though the movie, like I said, wasn't great. There was tension throughout the film, but that to me was the biggest tension, because it's she's a lone survivor dealing with the last demon that she has to get rid of. And all she has is a chainsaw, pretty effective though. But it also too, it paid homage to the original one where Ash is holding the chainsaw. I don't think you could,
even when her hand was getting pulled off. I'm it's just her hand. She's gonna put the chainsaw on the end of her hand.
No, if only. Though a failed attempt to do a remake, I still appreciate this scene. There were so many cringe-worthy moments in it.
Well, good cringe-worthy.
Yeah,
not bad cringe-worthy. The cringe-worthy, the blade going into her knee or whatever. It's it's that kind of cringe. And it's just so effective in conveying that feeling, because everyone knows what it's like to get a paper cut. You can almost relate. This is the 10 times paper cut. It's just the edge of the blade cutting through her knee. It's oh my god.
It's how many of those do you think you could take? None, because I would not want to take it. I wouldn't want to take it.
And God, they must have used so much fucking blood.
Oh my god.
So much fake blood.
The amount of takes they probably...
That must have been their whole budget.
Just on the blood alone.
On the blood alone.
Batman vs. Superman.
I never saw it because I heard it was horrible.
I can say numerous things about how bad this movie was, especially it's almost a 3-hour movie, and there's only a 5-minute fight between Superman and Batman. You'd think we'd at least get 3, but no, we get 1 that almost was just really just uninteresting to watch. Like I didn't
Wasn't
like
it like almost as bad as the Neo and Mr. Smith fight at the end of Matrix 3?
Yeah, basically. But for this one particular scene, I thought almost made up for it and was actually almost better. Well, actually, no, it was better than the actual Batman versus Superman fight. Was the warehouse scene where Batman goes and is trying to save Martha. What I really liked was it was the first time you actually saw Batman fighting a bunch of guys at the same time, rather than, kind of in every other Batman movie, every time like a goons come up, it's only like one at a time.
Right.
Right.
And I think similar to the ending fight of that Evil Dead movie, it was very visceral. Like, had a lot of hits and impacts that were like a lot of practical stunts and whatnot, and I didn't see much CG in there. I don't think even a lot of those arm breaking things like looked like they were practical effects, and so it really it had that level, and it was also very good in terms of how it told the story visually. Like, it wasn't like some modern fight scenes where there's so many fast cuts and close cuts you can't tell what's going on. There's a lot of wide shots, you could clearly tell what was happening, and the pacing was really good. It was actually pretty decent fight scene.
And like going back when I made that comment where it's, and every time you're seeing a fight with Batman, it's always like one goon at a time, right? It's kind of like when you watch,
just sort of stands around.
Yeah, it's like Batman Arkham Asylum when you're playing that game, and like you go one goon at a time, and then the next goon comes in, and then the next goon comes in. It's kind of like oh my god, like have you guys ever thought about maybe fighting as a team and like. That would be a more defective...
That's why they always lose against Batman.
But, in this one, I thought that was actually very... it's what I think separated definitely from, like, let's say Christian Bale's Batman.
Well, and I think the thing, too, with other previous Batman movies and whatnot is Batman's less of a fighter and more of, like, a using technology kind of guy. And in this, you see more of the sort of, like, Batman that knows, like, martial arts and stuff or whatever and fights people hand to hand as opposed to using his technology, although he does still use some in the scene. But
Star Wars Phantom Menace, we all know how bad this movie was, though I will say for me it ages well.
It ages well because the amount of didn't overuse CG like the other prequel movies. They used the right amount of CG.
However, the one scene I think everyone can agree on is the Duel of the Fates with Darth Maul. Mm-hmm. Though, mind you, I was still disappointed. In the movie, they killed Darth Maul, and you never see him again after that.
I mean, in canon, he lived.
I'm just saying in the movies. Let's just say we're not talking about the animated series, but like with
let's not get into Star Wars again.
that scene alone, honestly, really saved that movie. Everyone goes. It's like almost everyone goes to see a Star Wars film to see the lightsaber duels.
Well, and see, the thing is, that was the first time we really got that level of, like, choreography on lightsaber fights. Like, the lightsaber fight between Luke and Vader in Return of the Jedi was pretty good. He does, like, some flips and stuff, and there's some moments, but, like, we'd never seen a lightsaber fight like that before in a Star Wars movie. It was always sort of just, they kind of stand there and sort of do, like, more like a fencing thing, almost, as opposed to the sort of jumping and running at people and swinging wildly and of course, obviously, the double lightsabers, the introduction of that, and you're like, whoa, this has gotten really crazy now. But I think that also shows, like, the other thing, too, you gotta think about when they were doing the lightsaber effects for those early Star Wars movies, like, it's a lot of work to do. Like, I think in Empire and Jedi, they did more of a rotoscope as opposed to the spinning thing they had in New Hope. And so it's a lot more work to do all the effects for the lightsaber, whereas by the time you get to 1999 and they're doing Phantom Menace, it just shows how far the technology's come in sort of like doing a lightsaber on screen or whatever. And then to also the choreography as well. Like, you didn't really see in, like, Western movies, you didn't see that level of fighting choreography in the 70s and 80s. And it wasn't more until the 80s, like late 80s and early 90s, you start to see, like, this, like, a lot of martial arts influence in the choreography of fight scenes. And I think that's what makes that scene really good, is it's just got, like, all those levels of awesomeness combined. and the story, and it also, the story told in that fight scene is really good too, obviously. The whole ending of it when Qui-Gon gets stabbed and he's dying there and Obi-Wan has to wait behind the laser wall or whatever, and so it's good storytelling and good visuals, and it's like sort of like the Batman one, the filming of it, the cinematography, you can tell what's going on. You can see the action. You can follow the action. I guess it was just before the era of, like, really fast close cutting. Like, they kind of were just before that became a thing. So it's good in that way too. Well, thanks for joining us in this one. If you know of any other great scenes in horrible movies, drop in the comments below. We'll definitely check them out. Maybe we'll talk about them in a future episode.
Please like and subscribe.
And we'll see you in the next one.
Good day.